You know, you have done a really good job as a season finale if you've answered a bunch of questions very simply and then create a whole bunch of new ones. But I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the season finale of Peripheral right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 8, the final episode of first season of The Peripheral. I'm saying first season, assuming that they're going to get a second season, and hopefully they do, because the way this ends, Jesus. Good sci-fi shows are good at answering questions and then positing a whole bunch of new ones. And this episode does a very good job of just laying out everything. But unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that we have gone through and everything that we've done doesn't really amount to much, because in the end, we're not going to see that world ever again. So we start this episode in 2028 where Flynn's having a very prolific conversation with Connor. Connor says something that essentially is the catalyst for foreshadowing for this episode. But basically, he's saying that, hey, why the Sims work so well, why we love the Sims so much, is because in there we can always reboot. We can always come back, reboot, and go back. But in the real life, in our stub, we don't have that luxury. We can't reboot the stub. And thus, this life gives you one life, and that's it. Till it doesn't. We pick back up at the end of the last episode where Tommy is calling in the Corbel murder situation, that whole household. He calls it in, and he's like, hey, there are 3 murders, and the assailant is on the loose, and he's out there and at large. They show up, and he's trying to like remove evidence. He's got blood on his shoes. He's trying to get rid of everything. And then when the cops come out to say, hey, there's a pulse on one of them. And he's like, which one? And he goes back and he sees that Corbel still kind of has a pulse. But we don't stick with that story. That story is unimportant. We move on. Then we are told that there was a shooting at the urgent care center, which for Tommy, he immediately goes because he knows his wife is there. He goes to the scene and we're picking up where we see all the death, and his wife lets him know that Reese has died. He's like, I know, I heard. And she asks him, was this person responsible for all of this and killing all those people? And Tommy lies to his wife and says, yeah, he did it all. He killed them all. I had nothing to do with it. We then return to the sim where Lowbeer is having a conversation with Flynn, Connor, and Burton. And in that, Lowbeer suggested that they have an alliance. They form an alliance. 3 of them come together because Charisse is planning to do some wild things. But she lets Flynn know that, hey, there's some loose ends in your timeline that I need to close out just to keep the sanctity of this world. Charisse is sort of coming after that. I need somebody that we can form this alliance so that we can sort of put a stop to that. And Flynn is like, all right, cool. I'll do this. I'll do what you need me to do. But I need you to save my mama. My mama needs to go ahead and save and give her sight back. And Lowbeer kind of goes to the auntie. She does her little pause and figure out some things and comes back to tell her that there's nothing I can do. Unfortunately, your mom is going to die in 23 days. And Flynn naturally has a pretty hard reaction to that. She immediately unplugs. Burton goes to chase her to talk to her, and he kind of consoles her in her present day stuff. She then tells her mom of her fate, and her mom is kind of like okay with it. She's like, look, it is what it is. I get it. And if nothing else, it allows me to, I can live these last few days knowing that I'm not going to be a burden to you anymore. And you can go ahead and live your life the way that you're supposed to live it. And that makes me happy. Charisse meets up with Ash. It looks like to Ash's behest. They meet on a bench somewhere in the sim. And Ash lets Charisse know that the information that she's looking for is in Flynn's head. She also lets her know that Lev is aware of this and that Lev is trying to use this to sort of get a leg up on that. And Charisse is like, oh, okay, well, that's a lot of information. The Clef should not have this. Cool, I'll handle this. What do you want in return? And Ash says, I want you to kill Lev. And Charisse is like, well, that's a lot. There's going to be a lot to make that happen. Why? It's just improper etiquette. Just simply the way that she treated her partner, she's not having it. Like, yo, there's rules of engagement, and he has gone against those, so he needs to die. I swear, the way people expect people to be with them and turn on them and not get. There's a lot of backstabbing. Like, hey, look, You looked at me wrong. You must die. Gotta die. That's it. That's the only way. Ash sort of asks Sharice what she's planning to do, and Sharice's like, well, we got to burn it all down. You now have to, it's going to be painful. It's going to suck. But to make all of this work, you have to cut off a limb to save the entire body. So she's like, well, I'm going to move the jackpot up and I'm going to put forth the effort in Flynn's current stub. We're going to wipe that out and wipe out that entire family. And Ash starts to have sort of some second thoughts about that because she has some affinity for Flynn. Not much, but she has some. Flynn returns to the sim to have a conversation with Wilf. Because at that point, Wilf says he is apologetic for presenting, which, as I said in the last episode, it seems like they just did this just to get her to go, whether or not they were 100% sure with whether or not it would actually heal her mama. But he presented the treatment that they gave to her mother as a certainty versus a possibility, and just to get her on board. And that was dirty, and he feels a type of way about that. It's at that point that if I was Flynn, I'd be like, "Oh, F you, I'm out." She doesn't. Some of that may be because of their connection that they'd had before when they linked, but she doesn't kind of just outright dismiss Wolf. It's at that point, Wolf starts saying that he basically feels defeated and he knows that Elite is dead and there's nothing really left to do here. But he also lets her know that Lowbeer asked him to speak on her behalf and to let her have a conversation. But he doesn't feel 100% comfortable doing so because she always has the possibility of having an ear into whatever the conversation they have is not going to be honest and truthful because they can't let it all out. At that point, remember the link. Flynn remembers the link situation, and she says, "Let's link up together. That way we can have this conversation honestly without having interference." And they do. And in that link, she starts asking him about specific people and how he feels about them, so she can get an honest reaction to each of them. She asks about Lowbeer. Feels a certain type of way. She asks about Lev. He gets that information. And then she asks about Alita. More so probably to sort of create a baseline. Like she already knows how he feels about Alita and loves Alita, but she just wants to know versus those two, how that reaction or that emotion feels so she can kind of level off and see what that all means. And then she cheats one and gets one more in. She's like, well, how do you feel about Flynn Fisher? And Wilf, unfortunately, at that point, can't unlink because he's just showing that he wants to get all up in that, making out and kissing, and he has a lot of affection for her. And she kind of like, I appreciate that I wasn't being gaslit and I was right and that these emotions were there and I wasn't just making stuff up. In that, a memory is triggered and Flynn's like, hey, you talk about this childhood home that Alita found you from. That might be where she's at. They go there and they find Alita. She's in her peripheral form when she's a young kid, but they find her. But she does not want Flynn to be present whenever they talk about. So she demands that Flynn leaves, and even holds her at gunpoint until Flynn leaves. So Flynn gets out of there, and then Wilf and Alita have a pretty heart-to-heart conversation. Alita unplugs from the peripheral and shows her true form is also there, and she shows up, and they have a combo. And essentially, it's about her basically saying, "Hey, here's the red pill. Some shit's going down, and I've given a whole bunch of other people the red pill, and we're starting a war." Because she lets Flynn know that health inhibitor that they gave us also suppresses our memories. So anything that has happened bad, that keeps us in the dark. You have yours. You're not willing to unplug from the matrix, if you will. You're not willing to unplug yet, but I have. And I have a whole bunch of other folks who have as well. Under the ground that we're currently at, there are thousands upon thousands of bodies that they've just thrown out to build this world. They have killed all of our ancestors. People act the cleft. Lev, the person you work for, his ancestor, his fathers, they're responsible for the death of all your parents and everybody that is underneath us. And we're starting an uprising to sort of combat that. That's the last we see of Wolf in this episode. It's the last we see of Alita in this episode. There are a lot of strings that are placed in this episode that they're like, cool, hopefully we get to come back here. If not, good luck. In the current day present stub, Jasper is there with Corporal Pickett's minions, the rest of his crew. And in this, you always remember in the first couple episodes, because we haven't seen Jasper in a while, but in the first couple episodes, Pickett's folks don't really think highly of Jasper. They think of him with sort of a wet blanket. But he's protected because that's Corporal's nephew. What we're seeing now is that if Corporal is gone, they kind of are usurping his power and kind of closing ranks and saying, all right, now we have to run this, but Jasper, you don't need to be here. And they sort of treat him as the lapdog. And he's sort of having his fix of it. He getting picked on, telling him to go get them beer. They're throwing up in his car. He just feels like I can't, without my uncle, I can't go through life with these guys doing this to me the whole time. And so they all pass out in his truck as he's driving them home. And he sort of gets this idea. So he puts them on the train tracks and locks the door and leaves them there for a train to come hit them. But before he does that, he wants to kind of get a second opinion. So he calls his wife, and she's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And he started going on this whole Monopoly story, this game story that they used to play back in the day when they played with the Fishers. And he was saying, "You remember when we were playing the game and I was winning, and then all of a sudden I felt bad that that the Flynn's were in it, and I started to let them come back, and you got angry at me because you're just like, just take the win. You need to have a win. I'm at the point now where I need to have a win. I'm tired of everybody picking on me and beating me up." And she's like, "Hold on, where is this going? Like, I understand. Yes, sometimes in that moment, I just wanted you to have a win, but I'm okay with you being kind. Like, that's what I like about you. That's what I fell in love with. You being a kind person isn't a detriment. Don't give that up. Don't sell your soul for whatever it is you're going through." And he has this change of heart. He's like, "Crap, you're right. All right, I'll talk to you later." He goes to the train to try to open it up, but unfortunately left the keys in the car because Jasper's a goof. And he's trying to bust the car open, but he can't. And fortunately, they all die and blow up. The train hits it, blows up, explosion, and Jasper's feeling devastated. That is the end of that storyline. We don't see anything else with that. But Jasper is now a hint of the kindness of his soul has been stripped away. The next day, Tommy finds Flynn and lets her know that, hey, there's been some chatter on the militia boards about attack on the silo, and that triggers Flynn immediately because she knows that that is what sort of starts the jackpot and sort of starts things in this world. If Charisse is making that move, something has happened. So Flynn says, "I need to plug in." She plugs in, she finds Ash, and Ash is she just word vomiting everything. Ash is telling her everything she possibly can. She says, "Know this, Charisse knows. Charisse is trying to do this because, well, what she wants, the data she wants, all of that information about everything, the entire library is in your head." And Flynn doesn't bat an eye. She kind of has already sort of put two and two together. It's like, that's why I'm feeling this way. But in that, she knows that her world, as she knows, is about to end, and she needs to kind of go on the offensive. And Ash is like, "What are you going to do?" And she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm about to fight. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fight." So Flynn meets with Lowbeer and with Connor to sort of keep the plan going. But Flynn meets with Lowbeer to come up with this idea to say, "Hey, you said you can't wipe out a stub, but you can create a new one. Can you create a new stub for me?" A bit of a reboot, if you will. Remember that foreshadowing. And so Lowbeer's like, "I can do it, but I can't do it or make it seem like it's coming from me because it feels like an act of treason. So it's basically a declaration of war. But I can tell you how to do it. I can let you know what you need to do to make that happen." And so Flynn's whole plan is to create a new timeline, a new present day, if you will, for her to live in. Some things may have changed, some things may be different, but she also still keep the entire data set that she has about this world so that she can attack Charisse from a world where Charisse can't see her. Also, they're planning to do it in a way that they can kind of hide that Lowbeer has anything to do with it. So they're using Connor to sort of put forth a message to kill Flynn in their current stub by the silo out there, so that Charisse is none the wiser that Lowbeer is a part of this, and that Lowbeer held up her end of the bargain. So Flynn talks to Connor, sets it all up, and Connor's willing to do it. Burton is completely removed from this conversation because Burton would not go along with this. Just wouldn't. But Flynn has accepted fate that, hey, either this works and I am put into another, I can take this data and I move to another stub, or I'm dead. And there's going to be some of these worlds, these stubs, and these timelines where I'm dead anyway. So let's at least give it a shot. So Lowbeer gives her the information of where she needs to go to sort of create the stuff. She shows up, she does there, she fights some people because some of the folks that are in the peripherals here are stronger than even her. But you have a bit of a battle. Not enough that I feel like justifies how easy it was for her to get in there versus how painful everything else was there. It just seems like it was very simple. I think for a season finale, the fight sequences or the fight here should have been a little bit more get there. It felt really easy for her to just walk in, like, cool, I'm going to create a new timeline. And there doesn't really seem to be a guards around that. But okay. She dismisses of them, gets them all, and then Sharice via another peripheral have a conversation. Sharice like, do you really think you can run for me? Like, I can see everything. So at that point, she starts kind of giving her an idea, like, hey, I'm creating a new stub. But this compass that you can see everything with, I'm breaking it. So you're gonna have no idea where I'm at. But I don't know where you are. See you on the other side. And then Sharice kind of gets this look of panic. We then see a shot of Flynn going out into by the silo is by the in the wilderness, and Connor is there ready to take the shot. She has a 10-second countdown that she's already given him, like, hey, count to 10 and then take the shot. And she started flashbacking, remembering all the people of the town, the Tommies, her friends, Burton, of course, her mama, everything there. She starts sort of having that flashback. And then we hear the gunshot. We don't see it. We hear the gunshot, the birds fly, and then we go to black. And then we have a reset. And in the reset, she sees that she's connected to her peripheral, and she and Lowbeer now have to go to work. And that's how it ends. That's how the season ends. Very, very open-ended. It closes off some things, but very much opens up a whole mess of other things, which I'm kind of excited to see. So now what we're getting at is that Flynn has opened up a new stub, a new timeline where anything is possible. Connor could be walking, Burton could be dead. That might be the last we see of Burton. But I also think, because of the way that this ends and how we spend some time doing character development on Tommy and Jasper in this final episode or final two episodes, I don't know if we're necessarily done with that stub either. Yes, Sharice may try to expedite that jackpot there, but now that Flynn's gone, she may just leave that world alone. So that world that stub may still exist, and there may be some times where Connor lets Burton know what's going on. Burton tries to go back and get Flynn. Who knows? But that world doesn't seem like it's completely gone, but it could be. But we do know that we're going to get a completely different version of some of those characters in another stub. But in the sim world, we know we have Lowbeer, Sharice, Jasper, Lev. They all have to sort of come. Everything, all the information that we have from this season is still present in them. So it's going to be interesting to see Flynn coming from a position of power and how she manages and goes around all this. I do hope this gets picked up for a second season. It's interesting. It's very Matrixy. Like, we're unplugging from the red pill. We got Alita's whole crew of people that are sort of trying to be that uprising. And so hopefully Wilf can connect Alita with Flynn and sort of have that new, like, she's the leader, or they're the leaders of this new resistance that's being built to sort of stop Sharice dead in her tracks. And it feels like, as much as I thought Lowbeer was sort of the villain, it's clear that she is very much on the side of Flynn and on the side of preserving things without massive casualties or wiping out an entire existence. But this definitely falls into that sci-fi world where we don't have a complete finale on this. Like, yes, this is a season finale, but my God, there's so many more doors and questions that are asked. And hopefully we are allowed to partake in that world of the second season. What did you guys think about the season finale of The Peripheral? Did it answer any questions that you had, or did it just open up a whole bunch more? I don't quite like I don't know why we spent time with Tommy or with Jasper in this episode or the last episode if they're not getting conclusions in this season finale. It's very much like, cool, never mind, we'll deal with them in the next season, maybe, because we don't know if we go back to that stuff. So it just feels like we were kind of wasting our time, and I feel like we could have got a little bit more time dealing with the action sequences in this. Like, build out that action sequence where she's getting to that final spot where she's choosing her timeline or choosing where her stub is. Spend more time there and create and flesh that out. Because even if you do go back to that stub and have Jasper, granted, you had like 4 episodes where you didn't have him, but you could have held that until wherever you come back in the next season. We didn't need to spend time there. So that's my one hang up that I have. I felt like we wasted time with characters that could inevitably mean nothing. But all in all, I did enjoy the series as a whole. I think Chloe Moretz is doing great. She's a captivating and interesting lead. And I think I do want to find out more about this world because now that I'm seeing that there's just sort of a resistance being created in the sim, that intrigues me more than the whole going back and forth on what's happening in present day stuff. Please leave your thoughts and comments about the season finale of The Peripheral in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.